Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Art History, the Female Perspective, brought to you by Ina Dow on the Near Protocol. I'm Gemini Rising, and today we are going to be talking about a very interesting artist from Australia called Emily Kngwarreye. She became an artist at the age of 60. She's an Australian Aboriginal person and a very remarkable person. She was an influential figure in Aboriginal art, born in 1910 in a remote Aboriginal community called Utopia. Um, uh, so we're going to sort of go through her life a little bit because, like I said, she only started creating art in her 60s. Um, but before that, she was just living there in Australia, in the county, and it's called the Halkari country in the Utopia region of Central Australia. She was deeply connected to her land, as a lot of Aboriginal people are, um, and her culture and traditions. And one of the major traditions of Aboriginal people is called the dreaming or dream time, which is basically the foundation of their society. It encompasses the belief that the world and all living things were created by ancestral beings and spirits, that these ancestral beings shape the landscape, plants, animals, and people during their travels. And it's pretty interconnected with every aspect of their life. Um, it's an evolving, living aspect of their culture, and it's passed down from one generation to the next. Some people tell stories. Some people create dreamings with their art, and this is what Emily did. Um, Here is her the where she lived. The lower long one is a Google Earth photograph of what that countryside looked like, very red. Um, and Basically, the Aboriginal people from Australia had things called song lines where they would keep the history of their culture. And again, they would do that in using art or singing or telling stories. Emily used art in the early 70s. The Australian government came to Utopia and introduced batik. The Utopia women started a batik group, and she was the leader of this whole movement, creating batiks designed that were inspired, batik designs that were inspired by her cultural heritage. And um, there she is, working on a piece of art. I don't think it's a batik because I couldn't find a picture of a batik, but that's Emily there, and this is one of her first pieces of batik work. Um, she did a lot of batik work, but she thought she couldn't do it anymore, and up until the 80s. Like I said, she was 60 when she started, and batik is a lot of work. You have to um, wash the cloth and boil it, and you it's just a lot of work. So anyway, just looking at her patterns here, they're like they have dynamic lines and rhythmic motions, and they're all basically transporting us into a view of the rich cultural landscape and ancient dreamings of Australian Aboriginals. I have to note that a lot of this batik work was actually printed onto other fabrics and used in the fashion community. So it's quite interesting that uh, this work is carried on so far. So, like I said, in the 80s, she transitioned into um, canvases because she found it easier. In the 80s, she would have already been in her 70s. She began experimenting using acrylic paints to depict her dreamings. So basically, all of her work is depiction of her dreamings, of her community's dreamings, which would be the Al Kare um, uh, group of Aboriginal people in northern Australia, um, central North Australia. Uh, so here is a her first picture called Emu Woman from 88 89, which she painted. Um, uh, their sympathy of symphony of bold brushstrokes and vibrant colors, capturing the essence of the Australian outback, not backcountry. So yeah, it's very it might look abstract to us, but it's if you saw that that photograph that I showed previously of the maybe I'll go back to it for a second, of the aerial view and of the land surrounding her, you can quite easily see how um, people living in this kind of landscape would interpret these things. um, I actually find it very interesting, um, and imaginative, and it's the Aboriginal culture's way of keeping record of um, their lives and their culture. So um, here's another one called Morning Story, um, and Awele. I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce it, but Aurelia is actually body painting. Women would have these ceremonies where they would paint their bodies, and so yeah, it's inspired by this one. Welly is inspired by body painting. Um, Another one of I'm just going to go through some of her notable works. This one's called Summer Celebration, and on the right you can see a close up of this work. Uh, it's sort of showcases her vibrant and dynamic style and captures the essence of the summer season in Australia. And again, I'm going to refer to that photograph of the landscape of where they came from. Um, it really expresses her ability to find joy and vitality in her surroundings. And yeah, Australian summer. There you go. One of her dreamings, the things that basically she, in her um, uh, uh, group of Aboriginals, were the keeper of yams, yam dreaming. This is a very large painting of that. You can see on the bottom left there, Emily making that painting, so you can see how big it is. Um, it's again, it's like dynamic composition and intricate dot work in some, and lines and movement. It's pretty amazing, very stunning piece, especially when you see it in a gallery. Further on, I have some photographs of her work in galleries, but and I think this one is in it. Um, Another one of her creations called Earth's Creation, and here is somebody standing beside it, so you can see how big it is. Um, this painting, actually, that she made in 1996, just sold for over 2 million Australian dollars. So, personally, I hope that her estate and her family will get some of that money. But in the art world, the traditional art world, you never know. It's just amazing work that she's doing here. Um, okay, so um, in what was it? The early 90s, her recognition uh, was she was greatly recognized. She won a lot of competitions, art competitions. She was uh, celebrated in museums all over the world. People sought were you know wanting her work, and it's really great that this kind of work has finally gotten some recognition that I think it deserves. They're imbued in cultural significance, wisdom, and knowledge that she's passed down through generations, and they represent her community's dreamings, her ancestral connections, and the importance of preserving Aboriginal culture through her art. So, yeah, uh, her legacy extends beyond her own work because, here she is. You can see the dots that she makes, and it's great because she was a leader early on with the batik, and when they started painting, um, she had already become very well known, um, and she inspired a whole um, new generation of Aboriginal artists with her work, and so they can, continue on learning how to make art. And she had a very great influence on younger Aboriginal artists. So here's where I mentioned her work in art galleries. You can see in the left here, that's the big yam dreaming, and you can see how big it is. The Earth's creation at the bottom corner, and another yam dreaming painting in the uh, top right corner. Um, they were featured in galleries all over the world, including the um, Tate Modern Gallery in London and basically everywhere in the world. Uh, her artistic achievements were widely uh, recognized during her lifetime, which is pretty lucky. A lot of artists never have that. Um, like I said before, she received numerous awards and accolades for her contribution to the arts. Um, the most prestigious one being the 8th National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Award in 1997 when she had already passed away. Um, and her impact on the art world is still continues and is still being celebrated to this day. Um, Here's another significant artwork. Like I said, her main dreaming, what she was basically responsible for uh, you know, uh, keeping the memory of her culture alive, was the yam dreaming, representing the yams as sustenance and food for her community, and the you know the dreaming is everything, um, was shaped by these ancestral beings, including, for example, this yam seed. Um, uh, yeah, this yam seed painting, um, which is a vital food source for the Aboriginal culture. You can see how intricate it is, how those dots blend together, um, and yeah, basically the cultural significance of sustenance for um, her people. Here's another one called Wildflower Dreaming. Um, the beauty and abundance of wildflowers in the Australian desert. A lot of people go to the desert and see sand, see nothing. But if you look really closely, there are a lot of things, and if you are if you've been born into this culture, and you know, you are representing and remembering and keeping these memories. So basically, this is uh, the keeping of this dreaming represented in a physical art piece that now the whole world is able to see. Another Yam dreaming painting here, um, where she basically, like I said before, explores the significance of yams in her culture. Um, Intricate dot work, capturing ancestral stories and rituals and connections to the land. And although this isn't, you know, a realistic piece, it's more like an expressionist piece, but you can really feel those connections, or at least I can, and I hope you can see that too. Another one, bush yam dreaming, um, uh, traditional medicinal knowledge that's being passed down and preserved by these paintings. Um, it's beautiful uh, colors representing the land she's from, the land she's on, the details, the observations of what a lot of people just look over. And the main thing is this, what would you call it? You know, creating a piece that will be remembered and continue on with her cultural heritage and keeping those memories of that. Like this one, the grass seed dreaming, again, another one of her dreamings. And like I said, everybody would have a different dreaming. Every cultural group, Aboriginal cultural group, would have different dreamings, so that basically everybody is responsible for remembering one or two or a few precise details of their culture. And she's managed to memorialize these things through these paintings. Another painting here in my mother's country, um, which is you know, very different. Well, she does lines, but she also does um, dots. This one I think is quite different, uh, but it's sort of conveying the sense of belonging and for her, the enduring legacy of her matrilineal lineage, which is the important lineage for the Aboriginal people, um, and highlighting the importance of family and heritage. Another very notable um, painting, I'll Halkari, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it means my country. And again, if I refer you back to the original photograph of um, the aerial views and the photographs of the land around her, this is a perfect representation of that. Um, it feels to me rhythmic and uh, you know, earthy, um, energetic. I really like her work, and I hope whoever is watching this will appreciate her work as well, and maybe learn a bit more about Aboriginal art and how it represents their culture and usually their dreaming. Um, Here's another one, Aweli, which is the women's ceremony that I talked about. This is a painting of one of the body um, paintings that they would paint on their bodies during these ceremonies. They're basically symbolizing the spiritual and cultural vitality of women within their community. And Yeah, another very vibrant colors, And I think it's just great that these things are, you know, have been made to continue on that remembering of the legacy of their culture. Here's another beautiful painting called the bush potato, um, or anati. Uh, it's supposed to. It is another important food source for uh, her her culture, her people. Uh, yeah, it's just, I guess it kind of reminds me of the relationship between sustenance and um, the land and spirituality. Another very beautiful one, sandhills. Same thing with the colors of her countryside, of her desert landscape, um, texture, movements, just very beautiful, vibrant colors. It's as if she could actually fly above her land and see it from above, is what I think of with a lot of the images that she's created. Awele, um, another women's ceremony. Um, uh, Awele means women's ceremony, so another sort of body painting image that she's created. Delicate pattern, the pink hues, just really, really beautiful. Here's an untitled piece, very abstract in form and color, um, but just kind of transcendent. You could basically meditate on on these pieces. Just I don't know. I really like them. I hope you do too. Very beautiful, uh, beautiful work. Another untitled piece and dated 1996. Sort of her dynamic, and this kind of reminds me of her yam dreaming. Those swirly lines, just really vibrant, and they're very, very large pieces as well. Um, this one is called "My Last Dream," August 1996, and it is supposedly the last work she created before she passed away. Um, it embodies her connection to her ancestral stories and her dreaming, and um, it's now put down uh, in memory here. We will always be able to see these dreaming pieces. So this photo here, this is Qantas airline. It really highlights her extraordinary recognition um, from Australia, from the country. Qantas is Australia's flagship airline, and they painted her artwork on the plane itself, showcasing her work for global recognition, which it already had been. Um, and I just think it's great that uh, cultures like hers are finally getting the recognition they deserve. Um, this is Emily. She's a very, basically a visionary artist who left indelible marks uh, on the art world. Um, they're visually stunning paintings. They carry cultural significance and have spiritual depth. It's not death, depth, and she's celebrated through her art the beauty of the landscape around her, and that conveyed her ancestral stories and dreamings. Um, it's basically, it has served as a bridge between uh, our culture and her culture, inviting us to appreciate another culture's way of seeing and being, and the beauty in every culture around the world. So I really hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you for much for having a look at it. And I hope you take a more deeper look into her artwork because it is absolutely beautiful.